Brazil is in the grip of a modern-day gold rush. Its consequences are all too familiar: environmental destruction, violence, displacement. Some people are fighting back, like Edison. He's battling for his land and for his family. But can he win?
It's all gone. That hurts.
Families like Edison's have lived in Pindaiiba for generations. Now he and his wife are worried about what lies ahead for their young son. Across the region, people are losing their land and their homes to massive reforestation projects that claim to offset CO2 emissions.
The promise of sustainable development is being used to dispossess local people. Something's wrong here. We're being lied to.
This documentary shows that what's being done in the name of climate protection has a dark side, and the trail leads all the way to Europe and Germany. Belo Horizonte, the capital of the Brazilian state of Minas Gerais, a city in rapid transformation and a launchpad for large-scale reforestation projects. At the Federal University of Minas Gerais, Clemens Leszewski, originally from Heidelberg in Germany, is researching what has long remained hidden.
We've mapped 540 conflicts in Minas Gerais linked to this. We're basically doing the work the government should be doing, but it isn't. Environmental conflicts in Brazil, especially in Minas Gerais, are escalating fast.
Leszewski wants to see what's really happening on the ground. The situation is becoming more volatile, even as new reforestation concepts are being promoted worldwide with glossy PR campaigns.
Right now, we're seeing a massive promotional campaign from all kinds of sectors. The message is everywhere. You can plant a tree with a single click and save the world. Just pay a little extra on your purchase, maybe a few cents more, and voila, you've saved the planet. Sounds fantastic, right?
The idea is simple. Keep emitting CO2 in one place and plant trees somewhere else to soak up the same amount of carbon. The goal is climate neutrality, but where will the enormous areas of land needed for these climate protection plantations actually come from? For this documentary, Leszewski traveled 700 kilometers north of Belo Horizonte into a remote region where plantations are expanding under carbon offset schemes.
This is one of Brazil's poorest regions, and yet major projects are underway here, all in the name of what's being called CO2 neutrality.
The small town of Cerrado. The plantation boom is raising hopes of prosperity and jobs, but not everyone stands to benefit. Clemens Leszewski is meeting André Alves da Souza. The lawyer says traditional communities are coming under intense pressure.
The plantation operators are stealing people's land in the name of reforestation. And when communities resist, it becomes dangerous for them.
Is that really what's happening? The lawyer wants to show us what it looks like on the ground. Just beyond Rio Pardo's city limits, the first eucalyptus plantations come into view.
This is a new eucalyptus plantation.
Eucalyptus, as far as the eye can see, endless monocultures presented as a solution to climate change. Officially, Brazil's savanna regions, the Cerrado, are described as largely uninhabited. But the people of Pindaiiba live right beside these new plantations and are now expected to make way for the reforestation scheme.
We're a traditional community, and we're afraid of losing everything: our livelihoods, our water, even the air we breathe.
Dona Eva was born in Pindaiiba. The wooded grasslands of the Cerrado are her home and the basis of her survival.
Avocado.
An avocado tree and coffee. Parakeets. They hardly need anything from the outside world. They even make their own soap. Eucalyptus is wiping this out.
Pindaiiba is already surrounded by eucalyptus plantations, and more are planned. Aerial footage makes the contrast stark. Below, the Cerrado savanna of the Pindaiiba community. Above it, vast eucalyptus plantations. Soon, this natural habitat could disappear altogether, replaced by monocultures. A plantation company has already fenced off communal land with razor wire. The message is clear. The residents of Pindaiiba are meant to leave. Cell phone footage shows community members tearing down the fence, defending their home, their land.
The fence was torn down. The community put up a sign saying, "This is our land." A tractor must have come through here. You can still see the concrete. The sign was removed, and this is where the clashes took place.
The conflict in Pindaiiba escalated. Plantation workers were determined to plant more eucalyptus. The residents were just as determined to protect what remains of the Cerrado. Eventually, Nivaldo, the head of the plantation company, arrived, accompanied by an escort.
There were about 70 people with him, some heavily armed.
Leave the fence alone, understand? Otherwise, I can't guarantee your safety anymore.
Nivaldo runs one of the region's largest plantation companies, now trying to take over land traditionally occupied by the community of Pindaiiba. He's a former manager at Cerrado and today works as a subcontractor for the company. Cerrado is a global steel producer, publicly listed and worth billions. In glossy PR videos, the company showcases what it calls CO2 certificates and presents itself as climate-friendly. But does it really add up? Clearing savanna woodlands that have grown naturally over thousands of years and replacing them with monoculture plantations in the name of climate protection? A German research team is testing those claims by comparing the Cerrado with the plantations. Dietrich Dahr and Katrin Meinhold from Weihenstephan-Triesdorf University of Applied Sciences are investigating what role each plays in mitigating climate change.
At first glance, it sounds completely plausible that the Cerrado, which is not intensively used, could be turned into a climate protection ecosystem through large-scale tree plantations.
To explore this largely uncharted scientific territory, the researchers travel to the same region where Klemens Laschewski is documenting land conflicts and human rights violations. Near Pindaiiba, they will meet their Brazilian partners. The terrain is demanding.
Come on. These ones, okay?
We've put on shin guards to protect us from insects and from snakes. We're about to enter an area of the Cerrado that's still relatively untouched. It's dense and scrubby. Now we have to push our way through.
Yo, Katie.
Yo.
These soil samples are crucial. For the first time, they could provide scientific evidence of the Cerrado's biodiversity, how many plant species grow here, and how much CO2 is actually stored in its soils.
Time to pack up and head to the second site.
This comparison between eucalyptus plantations and the Cerrado savanna could be explosive. It has the potential to challenge the central promise behind these reforestation projects, climate protection.
The method is straightforward. We excavate the soil in layers of 20 centimeters.
This looks completely different from the Cerrado.
We dig down layer by layer to a depth of 1 meter. Every 20 centimeters, we take samples. In the lab, we analyze them, looking at nutrients, humus, and carbon content in the different layers. That way, we can calculate how much this land actually contributes to carbon storage and climate protection.
While the scientists search the soil for answers to the climate question, Leszewski and Alves da Sousa are meeting residents of Pindaiiba, people whose livelihoods are threatened by reforestation.
This was his father's land. It was stolen from them, a land grab.
Suddenly, pickup trucks belonging to a security company appear. Overhead, a drone is circling. Leszewski wants to know what the men in the vehicles are doing here.
Good morning. We noticed you were watching us.
This is Gerdau's property.
Gerdau's.
This is the property of Gerdau.
He says they're here to protect Gerdau's property and the local population as well.
That's nonsense. That's their vehicle with the dogs.
Oh my goodness. She's saying they were never told these men were here to protect them. Quite the opposite. When people go to collect firewood, the pickups arrive with dogs, and the dogs are let loose on them. There's another vehicle.
Gerdau has not commented on these allegations. How dangerous are such security companies? According to Andre Alves da Sousa, a company guarding another operator's plantations was responsible for a fatal attack.
There was a truly barbaric murder here in this region.
A security guard killed a farmer in front of his daughter to send a message. She was supposed to tell the other communities that no one was allowed to collect firewood in the plantations.
Shortly after this interview, Zaqueu Fernandes Balieiro, a father and leader of a traditional community, was shot dead. Investigators in that case also focused on a security company operating in the region. Back in the Cerrado, the scientific team begins the second phase of its research. Within a marked plot, every tree and shrub is measured and samples are taken. Then the team moves on to the plantations.
We're carrying out exactly the same studies there, so we can directly compare how these ecosystems perform. That includes their biodiversity, water storage, soil protection, and carbon storage.
11 meters.
If you listen closely, there are no bird calls at all.
Silent forest.
It's a silent forest. There's no bird song. You don't hear any birds.
The eucalyptus plantations are transforming the environment. Since their expansion, springs and streams have begun to dry up. Next to empty stream beds, the plantations remain lush and green. Multinational steel companies like ArcelorMittal and Aparam are planting trees here on an industrial scale. Some of their PR campaigns prominently feature the seal of approval of the Forest Stewardship Council, an international certification body headquartered in Germany. It's meant to signal compliance with environmental standards and respect for human rights. And in the world of carbon trading, the FSC label is a valuable asset. So how accurate are these FSC reports? Scientist Valmir Macedo is documenting how this kind of reforestation is affecting the region's water balance.
Our studies show that eucalyptus monocultures are causing the groundwater level here to drop by about 10 centimeters every year.
Can this really be true? The plantations run by the large operators look well maintained and carry FSC certification. Leszewski wants to hear more from the local residents. Salech is the leader of this community.
It's gotten so bad that our wells have dried up. We had to give up our livestock. Things kept getting worse, and now it's really very hard to survive.
Salech wants to show us something related to the FSC certification report.
This used to be a rushing stream that had water all year round.
Today, the stream is dry. Yet the FSC report reaches a different conclusion. Documents show that the FSC was informed in writing several times about this case and about similar incidents in the region. Still, the report concludes that the allegations could not be substantiated.
This is a clear violation of the FSC's first principle, respect for human rights. Access to water is a human right, and here that right is clearly being denied to these communities. By certifying this, the FSC is violating its own rules.
When asked, the FSC cited Aparam's certification, said it knew of no confirmed violations by ArcelorMittal, and welcomed information on possible breaches. Aparam stated that its plantations comply with the highest environmental and social standards, rejecting claims of greenwashing and human rights violations. In one of Brazil's poorest regions, the situation remains dire. Reforestation, meant as a solution, is causing suffering and deepening divisions.
This is a place where people give thanks for having escaped suffering, but it also stands for how much suffering there's been here and how much still exists. People disappear from their farms without a trace. Bodies are found. People are run over, and it's never clear whether it was an accident or deliberate. All of this is extremely, extremely stressful.
So what will happen to the people now facing displacement by the plantations?
It feels like the calm before the storm.
Then an emergency call reaches the lawyer André Alves da Sousa. In Pindaiiba, part of the Cerrado is being cleared without authorization. In just one day, an area the size of 1,600 soccer pitches is destroyed.
The community is defending itself. This camp is meant to protect their land. People will stay until the courts take up the case, day and night, to defend what's theirs.
In the early morning hours, heavy machinery moved in, accompanied by police. They were not there to protect the people or the natural environment.
The police don't intervene. People feel abandoned and are taking matters into their own hands.
This cell phone footage shows what follows environmental destruction, violence and counter-violence. That day, the people of Pindaiiba did manage to push the plantation workers back.
It was desperation. They don't even see us as human.
At first, it felt like a victory, but it didn't last long. Now, the people of Pindaiiba themselves are facing accusations of violence.
They destroy everything, and we're left here in misery.
In Europe and the US, you talk about carbon neutrality, but it doesn't really exist.
There used to be deer and armadillos here. My father warned us about jaguars. It's all gone, and that hurts.
Despite all this human suffering, could plantations still play a role in fighting the climate crisis? Klemens Leszewski wants answers. Deep inside the plantations, he makes a discovery: a cleared area belonging to the steel company Gerdau. Just beyond it are hundreds of brick huts, smoke rising from each one, charcoal ovens.
The eucalyptus that's supposed to store carbon is burned almost immediately, turned into charcoal. It's unbelievable. 400 charcoal burners, all smoking away. A war on nature.
Trees meant to act as carbon sinks are cut down and burned, releasing the CO2 they stored. The charcoal is then loaded onto trucks.
That raises the obvious question: how is this climate protection?
How can reforestation carried out in the name of climate protection end up destroying natural habitats and fueling charcoal production instead? Leszewski follows the trucks as they leave the plantations, passing vast mining sites and iron ore mines.
Wow.
The journey continues along the endless roads of the Cerrado. Again and again, trucks loaded with charcoal appear. Eventually, they converge here.
There are a lot of ore trucks here. And coal trucks. This is where the charcoal meets the iron ore.
Fire, smoke, and searing heat are everywhere across the entire valley. Above it all, a dome of pollution hangs over the landscape. This is where the charcoal trail ends, in the furnaces of iron and steel production. Here, iron ore is turned into pellets using heat generated by burning charcoal made from eucalyptus.
The charcoal produced across hundreds of thousands of hectares in northern Minas is simply burned again right here.
The plants run around the clock. Their product is in demand, so-called lower carbon iron ore pellets, produced using what the industry calls sustainable charcoal. The trail now leads to Europe and the German port of Hamburg, where pellets from Brazil arrive. Arne Langner works for ArcelorMittal, one of the world's largest steel producers. The company operates mines and eucalyptus plantations in Minas Gerais.
These are iron ore pellets from Brazil or Canada. They come from our own mines, extracted to our highest standards, pelletized there, and then shipped to Europe.
So-called green steel is being promoted as the future and as an opportunity for German industry to demonstrate its climate credentials. Flames roar in the furnace as metal is melted to produce what's often described as climate-friendly steel. Then we notice a familiar name, Gerdau. The Brazilian corporation alleged to be linked to plantation operators involved in land conflicts with the community of Pindaiiba. So what role does Gerdau play in supposedly cleaner steel production in Germany? That's a question Arne Langner doesn't answer. The German market is set to embrace green steel. Hamburg's public transport authority is one of the major customers. Its U5 subway line project aims to set new benchmarks, including for sustainable construction.
We only use green steel. We have very clear requirements for our construction companies and suppliers. Our tenders now include annual checks of what's available on the market. And if greener steel is available on the market, companies are required to use it here.
That helps the market grow. Hamburg is leading the way. That's great. We need more projects like this.
ArcelorMittal points to comprehensive environmental audits, a whistleblower system, and FSC certification, and says it is not aware of any environmental problems or complaints linked to its eucalyptus plantations in Brazil. On a scientific level, however, Dietrich Dahr and Katrin Meinhold can now provide answers and clarity.
The results are pretty clear. We found around 30 to 40 species in the undergrowth and shrub layer of the eucalyptus plantations.
So how many plant species are in the Cerrado?
The Cerrado has 3 times as many. We've identified more than 100 different species. That gives us a very clear picture, and it backs up with hard data what we already suspected when we were out there.
What's key is that roughly half of the biomass and a large share of the carbon is stored underground in the roots.
The Cerrado's secret, it's an inverted forest. Its roots store far more CO2 than the plantations above ground. For the first time, the scientists hear about the other strands of research carried out for this film.
If ecosystems in Brazil are being destroyed so the West can keep producing steel, and that steel is then given a green label, that's completely absurd.
The World Bank plays a key role in promoting reforestation initiatives and carbon offset mechanisms. For this documentary, officials responsible for these programs agree to meet with Clemens Leszewski.
The carbon market was originally intended to make it possible for poorer countries to finance the transition to a sustainable economy. That was the idea behind it.
In principle, the World Bank set this process in motion, and it's triggered an enormous number of conflicts.
I was there. I managed the project. And I have to disagree, at least in part. Brazil is the only country with steel production that is sustainable, or partly sustainable. About 10% is produced using charcoal instead of lignite or brown coal. And that charcoal comes from eucalyptus plantations, which are intended to replace fossil fuels. This was the first sustainable plantation aimed at replacing fossil fuels in the steel industry.
Destroying the Cerrado, replacing it with eucalyptus, and then burning those trees to make charcoal for the steel industry, is that really sustainable?
This project was examined by a whole range of NGOs. There were no conflicts.
This film has documented conflicts. So why does the World Bank refuse to acknowledge them? The World Bank official places the responsibility with the certifiers, including the FSC.
We have to rely on the FSC, on the fact that all 7 certification processes we've had are working. These certification processes have to be implemented as intended.
Responsibility is shifted elsewhere, and the consequences.
It shows a huge gap between aspiration and reality, maybe even an illusion people want to preserve. I wouldn't want to say it was deliberate. I'm sure he experienced things the way he described them in good faith. But what I saw was something very different.
The World Bank has since announced investments of more than 250 million euros in Aparam's eucalyptus plantations in Minas Gerais. There are plans to expand them by 25%. These are the very plantations threatening Salete and her community. So, will governments have the courage to pursue genuine environmental protection? In any case, the World Bank has another proposal.
The Brazilian government has taken up a proposal from the World Bank, the Tropical Force Forever Fund. The idea is to create an investment fund worth several $100 billion.
The World Bank says it takes all allegations relating to environmental and social impacts very seriously. Money may offer answers at the level of global politics, but for the families of Pindaiiba, it means they must continue to worry about the future of their children.
The Cerrado used to be everywhere. It was so dense you couldn't even walk through it.